Welcome to another episode of Crosstalk. My name is Kevin Tocci, and I will be your host for the next 30 minutes. Now, as you have come to know this particular program, we do our best to, it's kind of like a magazine show. It depends on what's going on, whether it's in the two communities that we serve, Whitman or Hanson. It could be an upcoming event. As you know, we have elections, we have town meetings, we have events that both towns hold, and we bring folks in from the community to talk about it. And sometimes this time of, right around this time of year, right up until September and November, when we have state elections, or we have even larger, like the federal government, somebody running for Congress, and oh my God, that's where we're going today. We have a gentleman who has been here before. You will recognize this gentleman as he is running for Congress, the 9th Massachusetts District. We have Mr. Mark Alliegro. Welcome back to Crosstalk, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Mark is no ordinary guy. He doesn't call himself a politician. Sees himself as a scientist. He's a radio talk show host, amongst other things. Since the last time you were here, in case folks forgot, tell a little bit about yourself, Mark.
Sure. Well, I did spend over 3 decades in the world of academics. And most recently, I was a senior scientist at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole. And at the same time, I had a joint appointment in the biochemistry department at Brown. Now, my appointment at the MBL is gone. I'm just let this lapse now because it's a new life for us right now. I still have an appointment at Brown, but it's dormant. My days in academics are over. I'm going to go to Washington now. And I loved my time in academics, and my wife and I worked side by side for many years. We loved our time at the lab bench, but it's time to do something different and try to take care of our own little corner of the world now.
Talk to us about Washington. Again, you ran for Congress 2 years ago. You are making another go at it. What is it that you see that there are issues with what's going on down there? And does it have a lot to do with what we're seeing nowadays for the individuals who are running for president, or do you feel that's something separate?
No. It's all very much tied together. There's not a whole lot of difference, except that the presidential campaign is so high profile and the stakes are so high that people are getting out even further on the edge in their campaigns. But what needs to be done in Washington is, first of all, people need to begin, and it goes the same here in Massachusetts in the State House. People need to be taking a principled stand on their positions and not just negotiating away their principles. It's great to negotiate. You have to compromise on certain issues. But in the United States, steadily over the past 50, 60 years, we've slowly been eroding our principles by negotiating them away.
Talk to me about the charm of the 9th Massachusetts Congressional District. What's some of the areas that you've had a chance to, walk amongst the folks, talk with them about the issues? What is it about this district that you like and that you want to do your best for down in Washington?
Well, first of all, like every district in the country, it's just people. It's just regular people. They're people that are going to work. They're getting up in the morning, going to work, trying to put food on the table for their kids. And then, of course, every region of the country has its own beauty. And in the 9th District, it's just about entirely surrounded by water. And it's got the beauty of the beaches and the shore formations, historical sites like Plymouth. So it's endless. There's just tons to see and do. It's a remarkable historical site, the 9th District is.
Now, I know that you recently have had a couple of different fundraisers. I see that you've had things that it's kind of been a united front. You've had a lot of the folks from your party who have attended these events to kind of get the word out about your campaign. What's that like, having folks come down, whether it's a Jeff Deal or Sheriff Thomas Hodgson, who's the Bristol County Sheriff? What's that like to have those individuals stand up or attend an event for you and say, hey, this is a guy that we want to go down to Washington?
Well, first of all, it's a little bit humbling. And secondly, it's also a feel-good thing. The last time I ran, it was my first time seeking public office like this. I mean, I'm an elected Falmouth town meeting member, but never ran for an office, anything like this. And last time, let's be serious and honest, I was an unknown. And frankly, all 4 candidates that were in the primary were unknowns, although 1 or 2 of us may have been a little bit more connected in the party. But this time, people know me. And some of our Republican elected officials, and frankly even some of our Democratic officials, know me, and I've gained the respect of a number of them. And so they've come out earlier, and they saw me through the whole campaign season last time. They know what I said at the beginning was the same as what I said at the end, and how I felt all the way in the middle.
Sure.
Right? So they know that I'm not full of baloney. They know where I'm coming from. They also know my strengths and my weaknesses. So it makes it easier for them to come out and say, this is the fellow that we need to represent us in the 9th District in Washington, D.C.
And let's not forget, you did quite well. Well, it was a 4-person race. You were right there, right to the end. So I would think that going into this, the one thing that you have on your side is name recognition. Yeah.
Now, we lost by 500 votes, a little over 500 votes in a 4-way primary. No, not bad at all.
No. For a relative unknown, nobody knew you?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
There were a lot of sad people on that day because, all night long it was, we were a little up, we were a little down.
Yep.
A lot of sad people the next day. But strangely enough, of course I was disappointed, but I wasn't sad because I understand that sometimes things happen for the best. Now, if we had won, if we had eked that out, did I have the juice to go on and oust the incumbent? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not.
Right.
But this time the whole situation is different. I'm battle tested. The campaign is seasoned and has been working together now for a couple of more years. And the circumstances nationally favor ousting an incumbent more than they did before. There were a lot of people who, when I said I was going to run again, said, why are you going to throw yourself on your own sword? It's a presidential year, and here in Massachusetts that means more of your opponents coming out to vote. But it was clear to me even back then that this was going to be a special year, and it would depend very much on who the Republican candidate for president was, who the Democrat candidate was for president. And at the moment, I like what I'm seeing.
I think there's a lot going for, if you are somebody who's running in Massachusetts, anybody who paid attention to the recent primary, I believe that something had come out, and they said as far as the other party, the Democratic Party, they had 20,000 people who decided to be unenrolled. And a lot of people don't realize the largest number of folks who are the voters in this state are?
That they're unenrolled.
Unenrolled.
Yeah.
And I think that bodes well for anybody like yourself who is somebody who wants to try to appeal to everybody.
And nationally, the independents are breaking towards the Republican hard all across the country. And I realize it may lag a little bit behind that here in Massachusetts, but maybe not. That's a positive sign for me.
Talk about the learning lesson. I mean, the things that you learned the last time. What are some of the things that you were able to learn and that you can use to your advantage this time around? A lot of times we work harder the first time around, and then we say, well, why work harder? We can work smarter. Mm-hmm. Tell me some of the things that you look to do to work smarter this time around.
Right. Well, let's not kid around. The number one issue in any election like this is money. We had an unbelievable campaign team last time. We had a great team of strategists, yep. And that's why we're able to outperform like we did. And even though we were outspent almost 5-1, to come within 500 votes is a pretty amazing thing. The big difference was, in the last couple or few weeks, having the money to go on television. Yep. And actually in the general election, it was the same thing. What our opponents on the other side of the aisle like to do in this state, because they're pretty comfortable, is they don't campaign until the last few weeks. Then they throw $1 million at television, and some of it's accurate, and maybe 90% of it isn't. But people see it on television. You see it on television. It's name recognition, and people believe it. So you've got to raise the amount of money you need, and we began the fundraising much earlier, much more successfully this time. We also needed a core of professional people that we didn't have last time. Or I shouldn't say professional, because everybody we had was either professional or certainly behaved professionally.
You maybe had more. You have more of them now, maybe?
Well, the thing is, before we had, for instance, I'll do it by way of example, we had over 300 volunteers. When it came time to getting signatures, we way outperformed the other candidates. We had over 4,400 signatures with room to spare, time to spare. This time we have all of those volunteers back and scores more, but we've hired a middle management. So now we have a great field director, we have a professional fundraiser, and we have a stable, I shouldn't use that term, we have a collection of town captains that we didn't have time to assemble last time. So now we've got a hierarchy, and the effort will be much more organized, much more effective.
You've built a team.
Yes, we spent the past 2 years building a team, that's right.
Talk to me about, 2 years ago you were out there talking to people. What are the differences or the similarities that you're hearing in regards to what you're hearing from the voters of the district? What are the things that are resonating with them, either the same as 2 years ago, where things haven't changed, or have differed?
Yeah. Many of the issues are the same, so we're drawing on the same pool of issues, because after all, it's only a couple of years.
Sure.
But one or two things have either come to the forefront or sort of dropped behind. So before we talked about Obamacare, we talked about the economy, the joblessness. Let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot of people without jobs in this country. All of that is still there, and the economy is an important issue. We talked about taxes. We also talked about issues of illegal immigration.
Sure.
That has kind of catapulted to the forefront. When I talk to people around the district now, far more often than not, it's illegal immigration and the dissolution of our southern border that's come to the fore. And there's an issue that's really come out now that really wasn't discussed last time, but it's very much tied up with the southern border problems. And that's the problem of opiate addiction that we're facing now.
Sure.
Now, we had problems with opiate addiction 2 and 4 years ago. It was just that perhaps the administration we had here in the state before the current one didn't like to discuss it so much.
Sure.
This didn't happen overnight. It's been building.
Sure.
So now we've got this really, and I hate the overuse of the word crisis and epidemic, but it truly is. This truly is. We have this opiate epidemic, and it's tied very closely to what goes on at the southern border. I like to tell people what happens at the southern border, unlike Las Vegas, it doesn't stay down there.
Right.
It comes up into our neighborhoods in the forms of crime, joblessness, and heroin. Over half the heroin that comes into this country comes across the southern border. More than half the methamphetamine and more than 80% of the cocaine. So it's an issue we have to get a grip on.
So you feel that's the leading issue, immigration and the opiate epidemic as it stands right now?
Yeah, they're about. And the economy is always, it's the biggest, broadest issue.
Sure.
But the border and the opiates, how should we say, are the sharpest, most emotional issues, I would say.
Yeah, I know, following and watching some of the things that you've done, that you've talked about. One of them is that you have paid a visit down to the border. I think you've had conversations with officials down in the area on various levels. Share with the viewers those conversations that you've had that has helped you build your informational portfolio to be able to move forward.
Sure, I did. I visited. The problem with our southern border and illegal immigration in general, both through our seaports and airports, has been going on for a long time now. It's sort of coming to a head right now. 2 years ago, it was towards the forefront. Now it has risen to the forefront, but 2 years ago, I saw it was on the rise. I don't think that's any stroke of genius to figure that out, but I did, and that's why I took the time to make the trip down there. What I saw did two things. It reinforced for me some of the things anybody on the street with common sense already knows, and it also shed a different sort of light on the issue down at the border. And it filled in some details that I didn't know. Speaking with the people who actually live on the border and try to conduct their businesses in those border towns. If you want to talk about a humanitarian crisis, we have to think about those people because they have to live with it on a daily basis.
Sure.
They have to live with finding the dead bodies, the desiccated bodies of people trying to sneak across the border on their ranches. Or they have to live with their...
Deal with the Mexican gangs,
the gangs,
gang culture down there.
Even just the livestock going through the fences that have been cut on a routine basis and getting killed on the highway. It's all stuff we don't think about.
You hear, again, I'm going to go back to, the folks who are running for president this year. And, a lot of the talk you hear concentrated on the southern border. Is it strictly the southern border, or is it all of our borders, whether it's the one to the south and the one with Canada, that we should be most concerned with and talking about?
Yeah, well, it's all of our borders. And like I said, even through our seaports and our airports, people come into the country on visas, they overstay their visas. Now we're talking about bringing in, loads of unvetted Middle Eastern refugees. I don't even want to call them Syrian refugees because we have no way of knowing whether they're Syrian or, Iraqi or Iranian or Afghani. It doesn't make a difference.
Sure.
It's easy to get false papers. Many of them show up without papers. Our own FBI director has told us that we cannot possibly vet these people properly. And yet there seems to be an impetus by this administration to just let them come in. The federal government's number one role is protecting American citizens. So as much as you want your heart to go out to people amongst these so-called refugees who are truly refugees, and you want to help them, you first have to focus on protecting the American people.
Well, let's talk about protecting the American people. Are we doing enough to protect the American people from threats that may happen here in this country? And the big thing that we hear these days is ISIS. That has what has come up from the ashes from other problems that we've had in the past while fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. Give me your thoughts on being able to protect our citizens, whether they're here or abroad.
Yeah. Are we doing enough? The answer is no, we're not.
Yep.
And this isn't an opinion. This is, if you just look in the newspaper, I'm going to correct that because the newspapers do their best to sweep it under the rug. So a lot of people know about the San Bernardino attack, and yet the newspapers, some of the mainstream media people are still trying to say, we're still trying to figure out the motivation behind that attack. Never mind that the person, came in shooting a gun, yelling Allahu Akbar, and their website and their history indicates that they're Islamic jihadist terrorists.
It was found in their garage. I mean, there's
Right.
so many things.
So we have things like that where people do know about it, but then other things are completely swept under the rug, like all the knifings and hatchet attacks that have been going on. In case you didn't notice, this is the modus operandi in Israel. They're just randomly attacking Israeli citizens and Israeli soldiers. They're doing it here. University of California, Merced, there were stabbings of about 8 people, same sort of thing. The chant, the attack, and the media following up saying, we're trying to figure out what the motivation was, So terrorism, Middle Eastern flavored terrorism is on American soil. In Tennessee, in Texas, all over the country. In the hatchet attack on policemen in New York a year ago, the knife attack on a woman in a packing plant in Oklahoma, it's here. So we are holding it back. But my sense is that we're sort of just sweeping, we're holding back the tide right now. And at any moment, there could be a breach, and you could have another serious incident. And we all know what kind of proportions those could take on.
What does our government do, whether it's the next president, whether it's Congress, the Senate? What can be done by our government to take care of these threats, and also do something in regards to our foreign policy?
Yeah. Common sense. It doesn't take rocket science to figure out.
You can't buy that in a store these days,
Right.
and not many people are using it.
First thing is, and we don't have time on this program to
Sure.
talk about how to seal the southern border, but you seal the southern border, that's number one. Of course, it's going to be, it's going to, like a blob, it's going to go around and people are going to try to get in more across the northern border. When people overstay their visas, you need to track them down. I mean, look, we can track the metadata, the cell phone metadata,
Sure.
on 300 million Americans, but you're telling me that we can't track, when someone comes into this country on a visa and overstays it? So these people need to be collected. I'm not saying they need to be booted out of the country. They need to be sent home, not unceremoniously. It's time to leave. Your visa's up. If you want to come back, reapply. Let's get you into the tracking system. You're welcome here to work if our...
Pay taxes.
Yeah, all the things that
All the above,
our
right?
immigration system already is geared for if we'd only follow the immigration laws. Do it. Yeah.
Okay. We get about 10 minutes left here, and I want to make sure that I'm judiciously spreading out the time out just right so you can be able to hit the important issues. Anything you want to touch upon in regards to district issues that you feel that aren't getting the proper care, but you, Mark Alliegro, want to go down to Washington and be able to work on for the folks in the 9th Massachusetts Congressional District?
Sure. I would say the economy, and another thing that's affecting people greatly is we're still talking about the Flood Insurance Reform Act.
Huge.
And how that's impacted people. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this district is surrounded by ocean. But let's talk about the economy first. The administration in Washington, D.C. would like us to believe that the joblessness, the unemployment rate is 4.9%. I don't think there's anybody in your viewing audience who really believes that. We have the lowest worker participation rate since the bad old days of Jimmy Carter. So those people are going somewhere. They're just not being counted amongst the unemployed. In parts of the district, the unemployment rate is approximately 2 times what the national average is. So we need to get certain pockets around the district back to work. And the things you look at for that are creating enterprise zones that involve not only increasing the security. I mean, you go into New Bedford on Union Street and there's a lot of boarded up stores.
Sure.
The issues are not only taxes, actually, but taxes is a big issue. I just emailed someone who's very integrated in the business community in New Bedford. I'll be visiting the Chamber of Commerce there in a week or two. And I said, to you on the ground, what are your big issues? Give me 3 of them. And she emailed me back, taxes, taxes, and taxes.
Goodness.
All right. So, what can I do actually in Congress? That's a great question, and thank you for asking that, because we've already proposed, and when I'm in Congress, we will institute what's called the 9th District Business Council. What a novel idea, that you would create a council and dedicate 1 congressional staffer to it to be a liaison and a sounding board for the business community in the 9th District. No congressman can be expected to know everything.
Sure.
So you need to go to those communities, whether you're talking about the fishing community or the law enforcement community, in this case, the business community. You need to be able to go to them and say, tell me what you need, and now let's start working towards it, right? Because everything can be accomplished. It's always just a matter of how do you get there, How do you get there? So here's what we need. Let's see what we can do to get you there. We may not get you all the way there, but with your input, we can make intelligent decisions.
You brought up a good point as far as the district and the water, and I know one of the big issues that we've seen for many years when we're talking fishing, and that is the federal government and imposing fishing, the limits as far as catch limits and stuff like that. Give me have you had a chance to speak with anybody in the industry in regards to those problems and how it's costing jobs and what maybe you might be able to do to kind of help maybe stem that situation?
Yeah, so you have a couple of things going on. One is the limits that they're imposing on fishermen. I think Scituate is down to about 5 commercial fishing boats out of Scituate now. It's horrible. So are the fish really out there? From the fishermen, I hear yes. From my science colleagues, I hear no. So the first thing we need is, look, I spent over 3 decades in academics, and I loved it. But I've got to tell you, science has turned from the pursuit of knowledge in this country to the pursuit of a political agenda in too many cases. So the first thing you have to do is establish trust and get honest and accurate studies of what's actually out there so that the fishing industry, the people in the fishing industry can trust it. So when you tell them, we're going to run out of oysters in 3 years, and they start looking and saying, yeah, my catch has been down for the past 2 years. We need to do something about it. Need to establish that trust. You got to get rid of the intrusiveness and the costs that the federal government imposes on these people. For instance, this NOAA monitoring program. A ship at sea used to be one of the last places where there was sovereign control. The captain was it. He could marry people, he could punish people. Now they have these NOAA monitors, and they're just about to shift the expense for that onto the captains of the boats. So not only are they intruding on the boats, but now we're going to charge you to put somebody on your boat that you don't want there. And I can only imagine that if I were a captain on one of these fishing boats, I might go out beyond the 12-mile limit and somebody might, go over the side. I mean, it doesn't belong on a fishing boat. So you got to find better ways to do things that are less intrusive, get the government out of our businesses.
Use a baseball analogy here. It's almost like bases loaded. You're the cleanup hitter, 3-2 count here. So I'm basically gonna put one over the plate and let you swing at it. And I know you've been a guy who's been talking a lot about Common Core education, and I know it's something that's not popular. Give me your thoughts on that and what you'd like to be able to do, if possible, to help those down in Washington realize the Common Core might not be the right way to be teaching and educating our children.
Right. So I want to start off by saying this isn't a subject I've just come to in the past few weeks. In fact, we've been working on it for a long time.
Long time, I know that.
And we have this ballot initiative, ballot question coming up in November. I want people to understand that I was one of the first 35 original signatories on that ballot initiative. Common Core has got to go. It's intrusive, it's expensive, it's ineffective, and it's federal government overreach. We can go on, we could spend an hour on your show just on Common Core.
Without even trying.
Yeah, we're not gonna. It's got to go. When I first started on this trail and started talking to people, there were some people who said the Department of Education has got to go. Mm-hmm. Now, in my, utopia, I say to myself, boy, it would be nice to have a Department of Education in Washington, D.C. that serves as a resource and, serves to help with the economy of size to support our local education. But the Department of Education is not that. I'm afraid to say, as an educator, the Department of Education must go. Since it was instituted in 1972, I believe it was, and let's face it, education in this country was before the Department of Education was here. It was great. So it's not like we instituted the Department of Education and things have gone up. They've continued to go down. That's got to go, and education has got to be turned back to the local level, to the principals in the school and the teachers and the parents, period.
We've got less than 3 minutes left. I want to give you an opportunity to look into the camera, tell the folks why they should consider you, depending on what happens coming up to the primary and beyond. If you are the candidate who will be on the November ballot, we'll have you back on before then.
Sure.
Please address the folks of the district as to why they should vote for you and how they can find out more, just by looking at that camera right there.
Okay, so with my serious face for this
Yeah.
camera over here? All right, so look, first of all, you have to understand, Hanson is in the 9th District, Whitman is not. But I want to explain something to the people all over Massachusetts who might see this. You may not be able to vote for me in this election, but I can still vote for you. And what I mean by that is that a vote in Congress for your values and for your principles, it doesn't make a difference if it comes from the 9th District and you're in the 3rd. Doesn't make a difference if it comes from Florida or Texas or California. If there's a congressman voting for your values and your principles, you need to get behind him or her and support them. I want to explain something else to you. In Massachusetts, it's very likely in 2016 there's going to be only one contested congressional seat. It's here in the 9th District, and it's not a coincidence that this is going to be the contested one. It's because it's a seat that we can win and bring over to the side of representation and freedom for you. So, if you are not in the 9th District, do what you can to support this campaign. Tell your friends, tell them to vote, spread the word, go to the website. It's markallegroforcongress.org, markallegroforcongress.org. Make a donation. Money, unfortunately, is the mother's milk of modern politics, probably always has been, and let's pour the resources, the boots on the ground, all of the support. Let's pour it into the 9th District, let's win it, and then let's come back and look around and see where we go next once we've secured this seat.
Can't follow that. That's excellent. Mark Alliegro, great guest. Thank you very much. We'll have to have you back in and talk more. Definitely could talk probably for another hour if we wanted to. And I want to thank you for tuning in. Again, be aware, educate yourself about the candidates that are running for office and what they can do for you. You've been watching Crosstalk. Until next time, have a great day.